So hello and welcome to this financial planning case study which takes you through how a financial plan can help with somebody going through a divorce. So financial planning particularly helps very well with people going through significant life-changing events, and divorce obviously fits into that, typically because both parties end up losing out somehow financially after the financial settlement. Either one party is going to be giving assets to another party, and typically they both end up with less than what they started with together as a couple. So we're going to take you through quite quickly through how financial planning helps in this scenario, and the idea is just to show you how a financial plan can help somebody who's received a financial settlement to decide on her options in the future. So before we get started, I just want to take you through some of the sort of pros and cons of the financial planning process. So what it can really help with these financial life-changing events like divorce is give you some clarity about the future, and ultimately somebody in that situation will be really interested in whether their future is going to be secure, given that it's a big change and that they're no longer on the path they thought they were going to be regarding their assets and their income and everything else. So really it can help them to work out some clarity over whether they have enough for the future. And then from there we can focus on specific action points to take, testing alternative scenarios. So the idea is that we can start to focus resources in certain areas to enable you to make the most of your financial future, basically. And in particular we can stress test some of that, doing some disaster planning, and again making sure we've got security in the future. Now, unfortunately, the predictions that we make and the assumptions we make won't prove to be true. So we have to review your process, partly because the future isn't linear. So we do stress tests in these financial plans, and of course we need to review from time to time to make sure that things remain on track, given that everyone's life changes and the predictions are very difficult to make. So what we want to do is just give you an idea of how this works in practice. So we're going to take you through a brief case study. So we're going to look at Sarah, and Sarah is contemplating a financial settlement that she has been offered by her soon-to-be ex-spouse. So in this settlement, Sarah's going to be on her own. She's got one child who's 11, and she's been offered to take over the family home in her name. But that comes with the flip side that there's a mortgage on that property, and her former husband obviously clearly wants to have a clean break and move on with his life too and get his own house. So he wants to be taken off the mortgage, and this is quite a common situation in a divorce. Now, in this scenario, we're going to assume that the husband was a higher earner, and he has a large pension scheme that requires a readdressing of the balance. So if Sarah doesn't have quite as big a pension, she's got some pensions, but her husband has a larger pension, and therefore it's a fairly common method in a divorce to share those pensions. And so Sarah can receive a chunk of her husband's pension in her name. So she wants to know what the best thing to do with that money will be and how that will impact on her future. And then the final thing is that because they've got a young daughter, that the husband will pay maintenance for a period of time, but that will stop after a certain period. So there's a lot going on here, and a lot of these things happen at different stages in the future, not necessarily immediately. So the house will happen immediately, the maintenance will happen immediately, but will stop. The mortgage will stop in the future if Sarah can afford to keep paying it, but of course those dates may not tie up. And so we're going to show you the effect of some of these things. And of course, bear in mind that everyone's situation is different, and this is really just designed to give you a sort of an overview and how financial planning could help in this situation. So of course, Sarah's considering her future. Should she accept the settlement, or should she try and negotiate further? Bear in mind that the rules around this are different to the financial planning rules. So your solicitor will help you to come to a fair settlement in negotiation. But of course, there are ways of negotiating one way or the other when you look at the figures. Then, of course, what should you do with the pension? And really, what she's really interested in is will she run out of money? Okay, so looking at the financial planning software, we're now looking at Sarah's current income position. So she receives a salary, and she pays into her pension. It's quite a simple set of affairs, but you can see on the right here, after inflation, we strip out inflation in these calculations, so it's just looking in today's terms that assuming that her salary increases each year in line with inflation, she's going to keep working on the same salary until she retires at age 65. And then she has to wait a couple of years until she receives her state pension in the future. So we've got some figures around that, and for the purpose of this calculation, it's fairly straightforward. If we look at Sarah's asset position, she has an ISA, just a cash ISA, so she's got some savings, and she's got a personal pension plan, and then she's got half of her joint property. So the proposal is that Sarah takes on the property with the mortgage, and of course at the moment she's not paying that because we're assuming that that's been paid by her higher earning former spouse at this stage. But of course if she switches to taking on the mortgage, she will have that cost as well as the asset in the future. So Sarah's also got some expenses, and of course the financial plan will look in detail at the expenses, but we've just simplified this for the purposes of the demonstration to show that she has money that goes into a pension plus into sort of household expenses. So money goes into her personal pension, and then she pays income tax. Don't forget that tax is an expense. So currently in a sort of situation where she's pre-divorce but separated from her spouse, she has actually got slightly more expenses than income. So if we look at those put together, what this chart shows here is a deficit in terms of if we take the income, take away tax, take away her expenses, she's left with actually, let's say about £1,500 a year deficit in today's terms, and that's projected to continue into the future until the day that she wants to retire at 65, where she's got that differential between when she stops work and takes her state pension. So of course her personal pension can meet that gap, but clearly at the moment she's got a smallish problem in the sense that she's using her savings to meet this gap. Now of course Sarah's plan is to deal with the divorce, deal with the financial settlement, and then move on with her life afterwards. But let's just show you, assuming that nothing changes, what would happen in her future. So what we have here is for the rest of her life, we have blue being income, red being expenses for each tax year, and you can see the expenses outpace the income for every year. So guess what, if we put all that together, Sarah's going to run out of money at some point in the future. So what Sarah's really interested in is what happens after the settlement. So let's look at her asset position if she accepts her husband's offer to her. So she'll continue with the ISA, the savings, her own pension plan, but a key part of this is that Sarah's going to receive a lump of money from her husband's pension here. Then she's going to take on a mortgage, which obviously becomes a liability, and she's going to receive the house into her own name. And really what she's interested in is how that will fit into her life in the future. So the first thing to look at is her income. So she continues with her salary, but she's going to get some maintenance from her former husband, which will stop when her daughter becomes 18. So her daughter's 11 now. You can see here her income now has been improved on paper because she's getting money coming in for the benefit of her daughter, basically. And of course she continues to pay into her pension. So if we now look at her expenses also change because she continues with her household expenses, but now she's got a mortgage to pay. So put the two together, and actually she's slightly better off because she's getting some money from her maintenance, but she's having to pay for the mortgage. So put those two together, and we can now see there's a surplus for a few years of income over expenses, but the maintenance is predicted to finish at age 18, and the mortgage finishes slightly later. So the deficit comes back in the future. But Sarah also gets the benefit of an additional lump of money going into her pension plan from the share of her husband's pension. So what we need to do is put that together and show her whether that's going to work out for her. So what we have here is projecting forward for the rest of her life. You can see the income in blue, the expenses in red, and you can see there are various points in the future where things are going to change for her. So in the early years, it would be easy to accept this settlement and say, yes, I'm going to be okay for the next few years, and let's hope for the best in the future. But of course, the reality is that after the maintenance finishes, Sarah's going to be in a difficult position where she might have to make decisions about whether she gets extra income coming in or eats into her savings to pay for that mortgage before the mortgage is completed. Of course, she can restructure the mortgage, she could move house at that stage, and then she's going to be in a more difficult position when her expenses reduce, but so does her income. So what she really wants to know is she going to be okay in the future? So what we do is produce this lifetime cash flow forecast for her. So what this shows is the first thing to show, if we overlay the current position on this chart. So the current position is the black line, and the position after the divorce settlement is in the sort of pink line here. So you can see that when she gets to age 55, all this is reflecting here is that the pension is now accessible. So the pension is still there in the background, but in the settlement position after the divorce, the fact that she's received a greater share of her husband's pension means that her future security is pretty well sorted. Now, this is not stress testing anything, and it's just making some basic assumptions about the future. But we still have an issue in the earlier years where Sarah may run out of money after age 50, and this is the kind of thing that we need to be careful of, that she doesn't think, okay, yes, I want to get a share of my husband's pension, and yes, I'll be okay in the future, but not at the expense of what happens in the short term. So we'd be working with Sarah to look at things like, well, what does she do about her mortgage? Does she need slightly more maintenance, or in her own name, or does she need a lump sum from her husband to take care of this? And of course, we can look at calculations to work out how much money she might need in addition to her the offer that her husband's given her to make sure that she's got enough money for the future. So just to give you a flavour of that, let's work out a lump sum that we would ask for to work out how much money she might need to stop running out of money. So it's only £7,000 here we're showing you here. So it might be that in the negotiations you would go back to the other side and ask for another £10,000 of husband's savings, and then she can be more secure in the short term. So hopefully that's quite a useful summary of how the financial plan works. Of course, if you'd like to find out more about how we work with people to deal with pension sharing on divorce or other financial planning issues related to divorce, our contact details are on our website, and please give us a call. Okay, so what you've seen in this video is just one part of the Prosper service that we offer at Woodruff Financial Planning. So just a brief overview of the Prosper service then. What we're trying to do is bring together two things. The first is a financial plan, which you've seen already in the video, and that will help you to get some clarity around the future. And we can also help you to manage any investments that you may you need to run, such as pension schemes or other types of invested assets. So the Prosper service gives you clarity around where you are now, with the idea of looking into the future to see where your money is going. So once you have that clarity, it will give you a good way of visualising where your money is going, and then we can start to look at different alternatives as to how you can make choices now that will have an impact in the short, medium and long term in your future. So it's all based around sensible, realistic assumptions, stress tested against realistic expectations for the future. When you have that clarity, you can then start to focus your attention and resources in specific areas, and this is where the different scenarios come into play. So we can examine as many different scenarios as are relevant to your situation, and examine how these different ideas may work out in practice. The ultimate goal is to aim to get you to a strategic overview and make the right decisions for your finances now and in the future. Really, with the main aim of the whole service is to give you financial freedom. So when you know that you've got some financial freedom in the future, you can start to relax, and you can work hard on making sure that you live the life you want, and that means perhaps spending more money. So hopefully that's been of interest. We're here to help. If you need to speak to us about the issues in this video, please give us a call.